When your advisor says you should start thinking about how you want to organize your paper, does this actually mean I should start writing, like just start writing paragraphs, or should I come up with an outline? And similarly, excuse me, when your advisor says it's time to write, how and where do I start? Dr. Miller, perhaps you can start with this one.
Yeah, I think probably universally, if your advisor is telling you it's time to start thinking about writing, it's time to start thinking about writing, it's time to actually start writing. And with respect to the second one, it's time to write, how and where do I start? I always find the beginning of writing a grant, a paper, the hardest thing. And I don't know if I have any great advice about how to do it, except that you should just, my best advice would be to just jump into it, even no matter how horrible your first draft appears to be, get it going. I like my students to send me their chapters of their theses or the sections of a paper, section by section. Then I begin to give them advice on how to modify what they've written. We go back and forth. We must go back and forth about 10 or 15 different times. If you just go in with the idea that no matter what, the first time you write something, the first draft, the fifth draft, they're not going to be great. It's going to take a lot of drafts, and it becomes a lot easier. Don't look for perfection. Don't strive for perfection. Just strive for adequate at first, and make it as strong as you can as you go.
So start writing means
start writing.
Start writing paragraphs and sentences, and not just an outline. Do the outline on your own, but then hand you something that looks like prose.
That would be my way. Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to say, I just read a quote, and so the language is a little harsh, but I'm going to give you the quote as I read it. And the quote is, "Get it down on paper, even if it's crap." I think it was Ernest Hemingway that said that, because he used that same C word in a lot of his other quotes about writing. But it's true. Nobody writes a finished product the first time. You can't expect that of yourself. So when we say write something, because Steve mentioned it earlier, we're going to go over these things and edit it. You want people to edit it. You can't have something, we can't edit something that's not there. I just can't, you know, and I'm not going to write it for you. The first one, when your advisor says, you should start thinking, it depends on how you go about writing. I find outlines very useful, although I'm not good at writing them. I tend to just go in and do sort of a hodgepodge between outlining and writing and let it work itself out later. But I find outlines can be very useful, especially if you don't know where to start. How are you going to organize your thoughts? I think you should make it a habit to organize yourself through an outline on your own. Make that your first step always, and work from there. And so when we say start to think about how you want to organize your paper, I think that phrase, that particular advisor was saying, let's get going. Really, you know, don't literally sit there in a chair and meditate and think, oh, thesis is going to get rid. No, do something. Go out there and do something.
Okay.
I think communication, again, is helpful. I mean, if you're not sure, do you mean you want me to generate kind of a fairly thorough outline or some form of, you know, an annotation? Clarify. If you like the outline, useful. Here, one of the things I found slowly but surely, I've been learning it over time. I've been here about 10 or 11 years. How and where do I start? This is a huge question. A lot of undergraduates didn't actually have a lot of opportunity to write. This might be the first big thing they're writing independently. Could be a huge source of anxiety for the students. Actually sitting down and trying to work out a reasonable timeline with your advisor, ask them, hey, I'm a little bit nervous, can we set up a timeline, etc., in terms of how far I should be, about when I should get, you know, kind of the draft of my intro, when I should be, you know, it depends on what you're writing. And then finally, another thing is, you know, you should start thinking about how you want to organize your paper. Sometimes that means get out of the library. It's a risk when you're researching a topic. You know, we used to jokingly call it paralysis of analysis. You could spend forever reading more and more, synthesizing more, and it's like, stop, stop, stop. Sometimes it's a dodge. Just get down, start writing. But in terms of outline, I agree with what both folks, yeah, outlines are great, period, but you actually might want to clarify. I mean, do we want to work out a fleshed out outline? I find it very useful for the first time I'm working with students for them to generate an outline, because they don't know.
Okay, so the question is about APA format and correcting and formatting. Now, I do know that the Graduate Student Association has a writing advisor, and that writing advisor can be very helpful. And I believe that what is the address for that? Just GSA at umbc.edu, and have writing in the writing advisor in the subject. And you can make an appointment with the writing advisor to help with that.
They actually, UMBC Fact Senate had some link to this. It's you were there on that. Tim's like, damn it, not me. Oh, sorry. They have online little things. You can automatically be enrolled, and there are tutorials on how to actually work with Word, how to work, because Word 2010 is just so frustratingly complicated. And so they have these. You can enroll in them. You can register in them. Knowing APA format, getting in the habit of writing in it now is something that's really going to pay off dividends in the long run. They have a lot of little handouts. I'm assuming you already have the manual version 6. If you don't, it's worth the 30 or 40 bucks to get. There are many, many online sources as well. And yes?
Yeah, my question actually is more on a LaTeX format, because me, I'm a physicist, so basically I'm told to write in LaTeX, but one of the things I'm looking at is writing in a format which I'm more familiar with and then transferring it. How does that sound?
Personal opinion?
Yeah.
Sounds like I don't know LaTeX well enough to say that, oh no, you'd be much happier. Whenever I did that with my dissertation, I'll just write it normal people's style, and then I'll translate it to APA. And they had to keep me away from high ledges during that period. It was so aggravating to try and transfer post hoc rather than just write at the beginning. But I imagine they're more familiar, at least. Physics are closer to them.
I wrote my master's in LaTeX, but that was like, I don't even want to say when that was, a long, long time ago. It's been around that long. Are they asking you to do that for editing purposes or for? Well,
because I'm in a unique situation where I have 2 advisors, one here, one at NASA Goddard, and I'm actually doing 2 papers at the same time. My proposal as well as another paper. The other paper is going into a journal, and ultimately they want LaTeX. I'm not sure if they're saying that for the proposal or not. So.
Okay, so right, so if you're submitting to a particular journal, you need to follow that journal's formatting, because otherwise they won't accept it, or you may not even be able to upload it to their site. So if they say PDF, LaTeX, Word, WordPerfect, Romanian, you have to do it in that particular style, otherwise it's not going to work. But if it's only for that paper, if it's a one-time thing, then it may be easier to write it as, say, normal style than translate to LaTeX if you're never going to use it again. Okay. But if you find yourself using it over and over, then you should learn it. It's not that bad. I did have a friend help me, but you can, and I don't know where she is now, but you can find somebody.
There are a lot of LaTeX modules now, too, that you can add on, some subroutines and things like that you can add into your code that can help you with the style. So you can change it from IEEE style to APA style, as an example. So what does the student do if the student doesn't agree with the data that the professor is presenting?
The student collected the data.
Okay.
But they don't agree with the way that the professor
is interpreting it. Okay.
Is there a reason why you would not agree? In other words, do you have information or other data or somebody else's previous work as in the law profession that says that explains the data in a different manner? Or is it truly a professional disagreement where, anthropology, Leakey and somebody else are arguing about what a single bone means in the absence of any other data, whatever, and they're just arguing for the sake of arguing?
I wouldn't say arguing for the sake of arguing, but kind of like an issue of, I guess you can interpret the data two ways.
Like it cures cancer, and the other person says, no, it doesn't cure cancer?
Yes.
It would seem, it seems to me that if the difference in interpretation is that vast, then there isn't enough data to show either way.
Right.
Right?
The data at this point is not really conducive, and the professor
So the professor is saying that, oh, this data is really showing that we're on the right track, and if we keep doing more of these experiments and you spend another 3 years doing this, you're really going to find the answer and cure cancer. And you're saying, I don't think so. I think it's nice, but it's not going to pan out. Okay. For that one, I don't have an answer. I'll think about that and let somebody else talk.
Do you think that the interpretation borders on questions of ethics? That, to me, is what I first heard. Okay. You just simply think either they're too optimistic or they're too whatever. And are they planning on presenting their data perhaps at a conference, or they're perhaps thinking about like a publication maybe as almost at a pilot level? Down the line, you know, to a certain degree, God bless them, you know, they can smile and hopefully it works out. I don't think you need to remind them, like I said, if they're, that's part of the peer review process. That's part, sometimes, you know, people will present at a conference and they won't necessarily tell you this is the title of their talk, but it's a working talk. It's a working project. And they're getting feedback as part of the presentation. So if what they're doing is ethically sound, and they simply seem to be optimistic, I'm going to say let them run with it. But that's just my humble opinion. If you don't think that what they're, I mean, because I have real concerns though if there's ethical concerns. Then all of a sudden my answers are way different.
But what I'm hearing is that this might mean a substantial investment of your time chasing down what could be just a dead end. Yeah, so.
It sounds like all my research.
And mine.
And your problem is what?
So
I changed professions.
So I think maybe one possible solution to this is where thesis committees really are valuable tools. So are you in a department that you have a thesis committee? Okay, so it seems to me that those members of that thesis committee should be able to help provide some advice as to whether or not this is a good line of approach or not. That's at least a good starting point, I think.